Bonjour et bienvenue à 9.6 narration, so narrating a story, passé composé versus the imparfait. So we're going to talk about some clues and different times where you would use the passé composé and different times where you use the imparfait when you're telling a story, because you're telling a story in the past tense, but we have two things to choose from in the past tense, and there's some clues that will help us discern which one to use. So first of all, we have the questions that we're answering here. So passé composé is simply what happened. Like a list of actions. What happened? Give me the chronological order of who did what, when, and where. And the imparfait in general is what was going on when something happened. Okay, so what happened? The dog ate the cake. Okay, that's what happened. What was going on when the dog ate the cake? I was watching TV. So that's what was happening. I was watching TV when something happened. And that would be an example of the difference between the passé composé and when you would use the imparfait. Okay, so you're using them both to tell a story, and you have to use them both, because a story, a good story, isn't just a series of actions, and it's not just setting the scene. It's you set the scene, and then you have actions happen within the scene that you have set and what you've described. Okay, so we also have things like the setting the scene. Remember the habitual actions, the atmosphere. You're describing things here. You're describing the people or the places. And then the plot is what happens with all those people in those different places, and that's the passé composé here. Okay, you could also, you're describing feelings here, but then you're describing the changes of the feelings. So something changed, and that's an action, which would change to the passé composé. So we'll see how it's a fine line, and you have to start being familiar with which one lends itself to which. Okay, so we have adverbs. This is a clue. It's not always the case, but there are some clues. So for the imparfait, we would have adverbs. Remember, they describe the verb, like tous les jours. So every day, tous les matins, every morning, chaque jour. Because remember, the imparfait is describing habitual actions. And so if we're saying every day, chances are we're going to be describing something that was a habit. Chaque jour, each day, chaque matin, each morning, chaque mois, each month. En général, okay, because that is something that would be describing probably a habit. Généralement, generally, d'habitude, okay, usually of habit. The word habit is in d'habitude, okay. Autrefois, à l'époque, at the time of, we're talking about, again, we're describing past, that's what we're probably introducing here. Toujours, always, souvent, often, rarement, even rarely, but you're still describing something that had repeated, it just happened to be repeating rarely. So those are adverbs that are going to be clues for imparfait. And then let's go to passé composé, which is really just the opposite of that. So we have tous les jours, every day. Let's do one day. Un jour, something happened. Un matin, instead of tous les matins, one morning, one evening, un jour, un matin, un soir. Adverbs that sound like they're interrupting. Like, remember, I was watching TV when suddenly someone knocked at the door, okay? So we have soudain, suddenly, okay? Brusquement, like very, like abruptly, it's interrupting here, brusquely. Tout d'un coup, all of a sudden, tout à coup, I'll write that there. Tout à coup, when all of a sudden, tout de suite, right away, immédiatement, immediately, d'abord, and these are words that we use to put things in chronological order, like first, okay, enfin, finally, and when it's leaning towards putting something in a chronological order, generally leaning towards passé composé, puis, ensuite, okay, next, going to lean towards the passé composé. Okay, so then there are some verbs that lend themselves to imparfait, but again, they lend themselves because we're talking generally about describing things in the past and describing habits in the past. So, être is a verb that's often used to describe. It could be in the passé composé, it could be, but it's often used to describe something, so there's a probability that it would be more likely in imparfait, but not 100%. Avoir, like you had a pet, it was something that continued. Vouloir, something that you wanted, that you would want, that you used to want when you were a child. Savoir, that you had known, you knew that, it was a continuing action in the past, okay? So describing a state of being, okay, être, in the past. It was just how it was back then. Okay, but they can be in the passé composé. So watch out. It really depends on the context, guys, okay? So if it's talking about whether an action had changed at that point, when something was being done at a certain instant in time, then it could be here. So, like for instance, I used to live, okay? We'll go here. Quand j'avais 15 ans, when I was 15, okay, describing in the past, I used to live, j'habitais à, and we'll just say NYC, okay? I used to live. But we can use that same thing on the other side, and we're describing a certain action interrupting things. So, quand j'ai eu, when I had, at one point, 18, when I was 18, I moved. J'ai déménagé. Okay, I moved New Jersey or something, okay? So, at this point in time, something changed, but here we were just describing the past in general. So you have to watch out, depending on the context. Guys, it's really, this is not an easy concept. That's why we're in chapter 9 and we're still talking about the imparfait, okay? And it's still something that you're going to be going over in French 3 and French 4. And it'll just keep on showing up. Okay, clue, time periods. Let me erase this out of the way. So we have time periods, time. Okay, so precise length of time here. There's definite beginning, definite end. Okay, so for a year. Okay, or you would say from, okay, definite beginning, definite end, from 2005 to 2006, generally, passé composé, okay? Indefinite lengths of time. You could just say avant, before, quand il était enfant. Okay? So, indefinite lengths of time, which is why when we had a specific period of time, we were saying when that person was 18 at that specific point in time, but you could say when I was, at the same point, when I was 15, I used to live there, and we're being less specific, okay? It's just the tone that you're using there, really. What you're trying to communicate And it really is about looking at the context and finding what someone is trying to communicate to it. Was it describing, or are they telling you an action that has happened? All right, context. Context. This is what you need to know. This is what I'm saying each time, because we can have something like, for instance, this adverb, un jour, one day, can be un jour here. So one day, I was riding my bike, okay? Or one day, I fell off my bike. So even though it's the same word, and I said generally it would be passé composé, it doesn't mean it always has to be passé composé. You have to look at the context, okay? So it takes practice, and please don't get too frustrated. It is a work in progress, learning the difference between passé composé and imparfait, and just getting used to what it is that you're trying to say, or that the speaker is trying to say in a paragraph, so you can understand why they're doing one over the other. Okay? Bonne chance.